We are roughly a month away from Fortune's Weave releasing, so now feels like pretty much the last time to just fire off a whole bunch of smaller theories for the game. And that is exactly what I'm gonna do today. Starting with Theory 1. The original Dagda is the main villain and perhaps even the baby the woman is holding in that Darkness Awakened scene. It is one of the first reveals of the latest Fire Emblem Direct. The prominent statue we had seen a couple times in past footage is actually depicting the founding king of the region, the one the entire place is named after. What stands out from his design is that he has pointy ears, i.e. he is probably Nagapedia in some shape or form, and in general his look screams, well, intimidating or evil, depending on who you'd ask. This is obviously based on nothing but aesthetic, but looking at his character design, I think it would fit right in with the kind of final bosses Fire Emblem has had a gazillion times. There's some Medeus in there, some Sombron and some Garon too. The fact he is presumably a Nabataean also means he is a perfect candidate for turning into the obligatory dragon final boss, and it matches the woman we see holding the baby, who is also presumably Nabataean based on the green hair and pointy ears. Furthermore, this is probably not a kind person. Notice the two severed heads hanging from his weapon, which I don't think are part of the statue's design. They appear to be chained together as if to show Dagda as a victorious warlord. Then add the fact that while this is hardly the only statue we see in Daxian, the others all belong to gods, and I feel quite confident in saying that Dagda himself was probably a god too. It would also explain why the divine sovereign Solel is in charge of the region now, seeing as he is a god as well as presumably an heir to the original Dagda. And if Dagda is a god, that makes him a very decent candidate of actually being Balor, who is the demon god and is looking to be resurrected. That is an important piece of information, by the way. Balor is to be resurrected, i.e. he is currently dead. Dagda is the only character we currently know of that is probably a god and probably dead. That immediately makes him suspicious. Add to that the menacing design, the chopped off heads, the fact he is Nabataean, just like the person presumably summoning him, and the very imposing trident, which will certainly be used in a battle somewhere in the game, and I think there is a very decent chance that Balor is Dagda. And if you assume that the resurrection of Balor is happening through that baby, then Dagda would also be the baby held by the woman, but there is not enough information to jump straight to that conclusion, I think. Theory number 2, or maybe question if you will. Is the opposite gender Ashmel also a character in the game? As in, if you pick male Ashmel, will female Ashmel also play some sort of role in the story? It sounds far-fetched, I know. This would be a first for Fire Emblem, we have never seen anything like this. The opposite Chris, Robin, Corrin, Byleth and Alear don't exist in the same universe as the one you pick. The closest we've ever had to this was Three Hopes having both Shes as well as Byleth at the same time. And I'm definitely not saying that this is a guarantee or that I expect two Ashmels to play a massive part in the story, but I landed at the conclusion that it may be possible by being a little puzzled by certain moments and facts. First of all, there is the moment at the end of the second trailer, where Sothis is approaching someone standing beneath her stairway, axe in hand, ready to slay them. She calls this other person the Darkest Dark, which could also tie into the person we literally just talked about, Balor, aka Dagda, especially since the first trailer suggests Sothis and this person go way back, which would line up with the fact Dagda is clearly an older god, around for the founding of Dagda. But there is one thing here I find to contradict that idea. This scene is first person. We view these scenes in first person, from the perspective of whoever is standing there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the only moments in Fire Emblem history that are first person, in cutscenes I mean, are with the avatar. There is the opening of Awakening, where we view Chrom being killed by Valadar through Robin's eyes, and if I remember correctly there are moments with Sothis in Three Houses too, from Byleth's perspective. This is obviously a role IS could break any second they want, but based on what they've so far always done, I'm not so sure they would show us a first person cutscene where the perspective isn't Ashmel's. But since the Ashmel we play as is not the Darkest Dark, I would think, that leaves open the possibility of another Ashmel being involved somehow. And again, I'm not saying we'll run into them and they'll be an NPC or anything, it could just be a minor character from the past. Say for example the original soul that Sothis brings back. Another small piece of evidence is Anatolia's banner. It is evident she's a follower of Ashmel, the Pale Raven, and so her banner depicts this Pale Raven, but it's not one, it's two. There are two ravens on it. If Anatolia isn't aware of another gendered Ashmel, who is this second bird? Is it Fortuna? Does she just like symmetry? Is her bride's faction so dedicated to Ashmel they view themselves as a second bird? or is this a second Ashmel, who also plays a role in the story? I can't say for certain, obviously, but where there is smoke there is fire. That said, this is not the theory I'm most confident in necessarily, even though I do think it is plausible and there is evidence to back it up. Okay, let's stick with Ashmel for a bit, as I have another theory on them, a more out there, fun and less serious theory. Ever since it became known that our avatar will probably not play a role during the main story, but rather their own segment at the end and start, a bit of panic has erupted in the side of the fanbase that loves their romance and S-supports. Will we still be able to pair up with someone? Is there enough time to build up a meaningful relationship and connection? Time will tell, but I do have a suspicion as to how we can build support with Ashmel before the end of the world and he is actually playable, since, you know, that part may actually turn out to be quite short. After all, Ashmel might not even be playable during the heroic games, but they are there, chilling on the Pale Raven's perch, waiting for you to jump timelines or however it works. But what if that isn't all you can do with them? Think back to the Somniel and everyone's favorite new dog creature thing, Sami. I suspect you'll be able to feed and perhaps give gifts to Ashmel as a way to increase your support with them before it's their actual time to shine. Maybe because the units are aware of Ashmel's human form, they can also even have support conversations in secret somewhere, and if you can assign people to clean or feed or play with Ashmel as a bird, you can even build supports between characters that aren't the Lord and Ashmel. This is obviously based on nothing but a hunch, a feeling IS will have to figure out a way to make avatar supports work if the ending segment is short, and this feels like an appropriate way to do it. And hey, good news for all you Dietrich fans out there, you might be able to receive his seed. Okay, time for something completely different. Theory number 4. Either Lita is being misled, or her father was not a good man. So far, ever since the very first trailer, it has been obvious Lita is a woman on a mission. She wants to kill the people responsible for the death of her father Guillermo, but who that person is was unclear for a while. The name Lechner popped up and Lita seemed to hate him, so he was candidate number 1, but then all of a sudden, this recent direct basically confirms the killer is actually the white-maned demon Bertrand. And Bertrand is not only still alive and kicking, he's actually a very important character in Fortune's Weave, someone who might even be playable if you interpret the Japanese website that way, who lists him alongside other playable characters, albeit with a different banner. But even more interesting is the fact that his profile actually makes him sound like someone completely different than what you would think. While it calls him powerful and strong, it also highlights how he is a noble and virtuous man. That doesn't sound like the kind of guy who would just assassinate a random man for the coin or for revenge. So, was Lita's father actually a bad man? It's possible. I doubt she understood the full scope of what he did at that age, but there's also another option. Previously, we learned that Guillermo was something along the lines of a legal officer in Daxian, which presumably doesn't make him a nobody, but also doesn't appear to be such a position of power he could actually abuse it. Not to mention that I find it hard to believe Bakar would be so loyal to a terrible man. So what if Lita is instead being played by someone else? In the recent direct, we got these introductory pages for every character, used for when you choose a path, and Lita mentions that she is not just looking for Bertrand. She has an entire list of people she hates, and most importantly, she didn't make this list herself. It was left to her by her mentor, Madel, which is a name that has so far been completely absent in the rest of all the footage we've seen. That is probably because Madel is dead, but still, if they are dead, then who's to say this list is accurate and the truth? Maybe the list turns out to have some other purpose. Maybe Lita learns along the way that her father was a good man, but Madel was not, or maybe Guillermo turns out to be a dick as well, who knows. But there is something fishy about this whole thing, and I suspect Lita's route is not as simple as her just going down her hit list one by one. Theory number 5. The house leaders from 3 houses will tie into Fortune's Weave in some way. This theory was originally born from basically just thinking about how this new game might tie into 3 houses' most popular elements, but I feel like it's been getting a lot more steam recently. The list of returning characters or ancestors or descendants is growing with every trailer, with now Sothis, Anna, and Sedef, as well as characters who resemble Petra, Marianne, Shamir, and more, a bit too much to be a coincidence confirmed, so you would think that IS would also look for a way to tie in Edogar, Dimitri, and Claude as well. They're literally the most popular characters in the game. That was just a random thought, but it suddenly started getting evidence too. Properly revealed this week was Honghua, the woman who Ashmel protects upon being summoned. Not only does her portrait somewhat resemble Edogar, they have the same striking and unique eye color and even general facial shape, her name is Chinese for crimson flower, as in Edogar's route. Come on, that cannot possibly be a coincidence. I don't know what it means, but it's suspicious as all hell. But it goes even deeper. In last week's Direct, we see Bertrand facing off against Dietrich, and he is flanked by a mysterious ally who we have yet to learn more about, but he kinda looks like Dimitri. And based on the coloration of his outfit, he might also prove to be from the same Chinese-based region as Honghua is, establishing a possible connection between the Edelgard lookalike and the Dimitri lookalike. All we need now is a Claude doppelganger and we have full-on confirmation. How the games will exactly make this work, no clue, maybe they won't even acknowledge it. I mean, the president exists, just think back to how Kaldori and Asugi are clearly based on Cordelia and Gaius, yet that is never really acknowledged in Fates. But okay, let's stick with Honghua for a moment for the next theory, or question I'm gonna try to answer rather. Who is responsible for the cataclysmic event that clearly happens between the heroic games and the summoning of Ashmel? Because the way the promotional material is pointing right now is all over the place. First of all, Honghua is definitely involved. It is mentioned in her profile she committed a terrible crime in the past and is now fighting to atone it, which is very suspicious to say the least, and a big part of her character for sure. Her voice actress, Jennifer Sun Bell, alluded to it as well when she announced herself as the voice of Honghua. So she's a clear suspect and probably involved, but then there are the lords as well. I think it's safe to say whatever happens during the heroic games, meaning that the four lords are surely involved in some way, shape or form. Then there is the fact all four of them have access to special powers that appear to not run on light magic, to put it that way. Dietrich's cloak, Lita's Vuela, Kai's hand, Theodora's arm, they are clearly running on some dark force, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is Fire Emblem's version of a deal with the devil and they are responsible to some extent as well. But that's still not all. During one of the early cutscenes with Ashmel, Honghua and Troy, we see them being attacked by a man who is clearly possessed and bears a pretty strong resemblance to Tallymoon, the guy with the toothpick. I'm not saying this is him per se, although a 5-year time skip could explain the inconsistencies, but I do think they are related in some way. The resemblance is too big to be a coincidence. Now, that doesn't have to mean Tallymoon is involved, but it does highlight that not only him, but also Bertrand, Anatolia or Orchel could be responsible, if not partly, or without the intention of causing all this. And then you also have the green-haired woman holding the baby, who probably also played a role in whatever went down, or other powerful figures like the gods or the Divine Sovereign. So yeah, there's a lot of suspicious folks here, and I think the answer is probably that they are all involved in some capacity. There are too many hints spread all throughout to lead me to say only one of these suspects is guilty. I think it is a combination of multiple factors, but Honghua and the Four Lords are names I definitely feel confident locking in, aside from the Nagapedia woman holding the baby of course. I'm gonna say Tallymoon is a misdirect and he's not involved himself, even if maybe his brother or father or whatever is, and Bertrand, Anatolia and Orchel don't feel like they would get involved with this either. The Divine Sovereign I have seen too little of to make a call, let alone the gods, who we basically know nothing about. Although, I do have some theories for two goddesses coming up, starting with Fortuna. My theory, which is a bit of low-hanging fruit, I admit, is that she is a part or a vessel or perhaps a child of sorts of Sothis. Sidestepping the fact they resemble each other design-wise, by far the strongest evidence of this is the fact that Fortuna and Sothis share their voice actress, Cassandra Lee Morris. Like, really, that should immediately put the possibility in your head right then and there. There is more than just that though. First of all, Fortuna is the goddess of fate and causality, which appear to be specialties, for lack of a better word, that aren't too different from what Sothis does. It feels like a part of Sothis' job description. In Free Houses, Sothis was controlling these things herself, but now they are suddenly outsourced to Fortuna, with even Sothis' divine pulse replaced with Fortuna's blessing. As such, it feels more like Fortuna is a part of Sothis, or an underling, or someone Sothis outsources her timeline adjusting abilities to. I mean, she is the progenitor god, who is to say she didn't create some of the Dagdan gods, or at the very least, stands above them on the divine ladder. Some of the Japanese clips on Fortuna also allude to this idea, saying something along the lines of Fortuna inheriting part of Sothis' powers, and that she, meaning Sothis, is the one instructing her to guide Ashmel. It doesn't further specify a possible connection, but that there is one is in my eyes evident. For another goddess theory, I must first admit I didn't come up with this one myself, but I came across it online and I fully believe it, so I felt like sharing it. The goddess Aurora is Kai's mother. Yes, that sounds ridiculous, I know, I thought so too when I first read it, but it's not as crazy as it sounds. Let's start with the physical resemblance. Kai looks like his father Castor, sure, but he also looks like Aurora. He looks like a mix of both. I wonder how that could have happened. Secondly, it's still a mystery why Castor was even arrested in the first place, but we know it is because of something that happened before Kai was born, and the Japanese wording even specifies it's for something that happened 15 years ago. 15 years ago is when Kai was born. He is 15 during the game. If we assume that having a relationship with a goddess is a crime, that would explain why Castor would now suddenly be arrested. Things have come to light, possibly due to the fact Kai can channel these godlike powers, and so he is taken away. Add to the fact we have a shot of Kai in the presence of not just Aurora herself, but also presumably the temple guard that arrested his father, and it does feel likely Aurora is involved in Castor's arrest somehow. And there's even more interesting things to note. In the recent direct, Castor tells Kai to take care of his mother. Sure, that makes sense. She was left behind in Rubaira village and now he has to take care of her. Except that is not what this means at all. According to the Japanese profile for Kai, he and his father lived together in Rubaira village. There is no mother in their life. But now, when he is in Daxian getting arrested for something, she is suddenly in the picture? How does that work? Well, one explanation could be that since the goddess Aurora lives in Daxian, she is now someone Kai knows and can seek out, and thus take care of. It all checks out pretty nicely. Doesn't have to mean it's necessarily true, but I don't know, I believe it. Theory number 9. The game is built for you to play all 4 routes in one playthrough. Okay, so I'm gonna keep this one a bit shorter because this theory is based on a much larger theory I made a video about earlier, where I discussed in length what the heroic game segment might end up looking like, and my conclusion was that it appeared to be much shorter than IS was leading on, roughly a quarter of a regular Fire Emblem game. At the time, I deduced from that there was probably a pretty significant part of the game IS weren't telling us about, and while that ended up being partly correct, it didn't exactly pan out the way I thought it would. But that doesn't really matter, the point still stands. One route of the heroic games is probably gonna take you roughly a quarter of the length of a normal Fire Emblem game. Do that 4 times, so once for every main character, and you would have roughly the length of a full Fire Emblem game. That does then beg the question of how many chapters exactly the Ashmel post-apocalyptic segment is, but if we assume it's not too long, you still end up with a game that is maybe a tad longer and bigger than your average Fire Emblem game, but nothing remotely comparable to playing 3 houses thrice, once for each house. To put it bluntly, 3 houses contains 3, maybe 4 80 to 100 hour games. Fortune's Weave is one 100 hour game if you play every route. So I think that when September 17 rolls around, you can safely jump from character to character without having to worry about suddenly playing a significantly longer game. And finally, theory number 10. There is much more to Blaze Arts than we currently know. So far, Blaze Arts have basically been presented to us as combat arts, but cooler and more special. Only the 4 main lords appear to be capable of using them so far, and their effects are way more personalized and unique than combat arts are, generally speaking. However, I doubt that is the full truth. You see, every character, even those that aren't the main ones, appear to have a blaze gauge, which you have to balance in order to get the most out of these powers. Why does every character have this, if only Kai, Dietrich, Theodora, Lita and Ashmel have access to blaze arts? That makes no sense. And no, it's not so you can check your blaze gauge no matter which character you select. We have plenty of footage that first shows the gauge of the Lord and then of another character, and they don't match. So, how is this gonna work? No idea, but the fact that blaze arts are probably more story important than we're currently led to believe has to factor in, you would think. To put it simply, blaze arts are basically curses, the deal with the devils I spoke of earlier. In exchange for your HP, in-game, or parts of your soul in-universe, you get access to these abilities, which surely has to play some role in the story. You don't introduce something like this and then keep it a gameplay mechanic, like combat arts. But then again, it is pretty evident that the reason the lords can use blaze arts is because of their unique tools and abilities, the cloak, the viruela, the symbol on Kai's hand, etc. So then, how would other characters be able to use blaze arts? And what kind of powers would they have? It would always have to be more generic ones, you'd think, but blaze arts feel so ungeneric that it's hard to picture what that could realistically be like. I do suspect the curse stat that is newly added to weapons, all weapons, ties into this. Maybe the blaze gauge of other units is used to track how cursed they have become thanks to their weapons? If that's true, it does feel like a lot of effort for what currently feels like a small factor, but that brings us back to how I started this segment. There is way more to blaze arts than we currently think and know. Okay, that have been my 10 theories, but I'm curious what you think about them. And if you have any theories of your own, please share them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing, and if you're also interested in either the Pokemon or Mario series, you may want to check out my other channels, Pichupedia and Piantapedia. Links are in the description. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.